Welcome back to another episode of Spiritual Teachers Podcast. With me today is a dear brother for many years now, Ryan Melchizedek. Welcome on, Ryan. It's such an honor to have you, man.
Brother, thank you so much for having me on here at this time. And it's amazing that the first time we came together and connected for the Brothers of Light Men's Retreat was like right around one of my final stages of initiations and testing before I could oversee the next few years of our International Planetary Templar mission. And now that that's been a success, and a lot of this hasn't been able to be shared in the alchemical year of the nine that just started a couple weeks ago, for you to be guided to bring us together for this sacred transmission is just so deeply profound and such a sacred opportunity. So it's a deep blessing to be here with you again, my brother.
Thank you, man. It's a true honor to have you, man. I feel really, I'm ready for some really deep insights today from this. So I know they're coming. And for those that don't know Ryan is a galactic wizard. That was my that was the way that I describe him. He's from the Melchizedek lineage. He's a high priest in that, and a bioregenesis Templar technician here as an ambassador to reinstate the co-evolutionary peace treaty for our planet, the galactic councils, and all universal councils to uphold the highest good for all life. So it is.
And forever shall it be. There's
That's
not
right.
much more.
And some of the topics we may cover, depending on how it's going to flow, it's going to be really flowy today because Spirit's got some really juicy information and downloads for us today. We're going to start by sharing a little bit of Ryan's awakening journey. Then we'll talk about the Melchizedek lineage. We'll talk about consent and contractual illumination as the core piece of humanity to truly be free. And then, obviously, any profound messages for the planet. So let's get into it, Ryan. We'd love to hear how it all started for you.
All right. First of all, thank you for honoring me in such a way to give us space to share some of my journey and story. And
Absolutely.
just this time around, I'm going to try to do it in a little bit of a different way than starting from this is when I was born, this is the
Right.
path, as well as just from this life, because no longer are we in such a linear perception or constriction within the time space matrices. So to answer this is the same as what I've shared before, but with the veil lifting and the security clearance being pulled back so that we can speak. This is just such a sacred gift for me to reflect on as well and to share publicly. So, and thank you for working with me as I am working through my own vulnerability with being so open and direct about who I am and what we have been doing and what we have been leading, because this was not able to be known or spoken for a reason, and it wasn't safe. And there
Mhm.
were a lot of us, myself included, that it was a dangerous time to be navigating in, even though that we know the promise of God and what was guaranteed to happen at this time between the cycle of what we know to be through the time we've chosen, 2012 to 2024,
Mhm.
to get everything prepared for what's happening now. So the first thing I want to say to start this, and I want to reframe this in a way that may begin to inspire others to start to take a deeper look at their actual awakening and remembrance process. This is not the same for all. Mine is a very, very small number that's on this planet, but the overall template has happened progressively to many of us, many of you that chose to be here at this time, that are either have been awakening or just starting to realize the truth of who you are. So, my awakening process was never fully just from being asleep to coming to awaken, to an awakened state of remembrance. Even though in a linear state in the short time over this last 33 years, that was part of the process. There is something that has gone on. This is related to the Ark of the Covenant, the two components, one that operates within time and one that operates within and beyond space. When we understand the actual existence of our consciousness and how eternal life operates, something so much more advanced than any immortalized templates, we begin to realize that every life, every ascent and descent of consciousness, every time we awake and fall asleep, is all actually happening simultaneously. It is all anchored within this now eternal moment. And at the same time, when we, those of us that have moved in and out of higher octaves and dimensions during this sacred peace restoration mission, there is a process where we have to be aware of what actually happens because we are living suns, like many universes, many galaxies, many creations. And as we grow through these initiations, we literally become an actual living sun. And the sun grows and it evolves. But as we bring that energy down into a lower place that needs that illumination to help them to remember, because we can never save anybody directly, we can just restore the system to allow the opportunity for people to choose a new path, which we speak of the true path, not because it's one way, but because it's the original. And it's what actually guarantees us to continuously grow and evolve and live a life guaranteed of unconditional love, joy, peace, prosperity, and unity, versus the free will choice that leads us into something that is finite, limiting, restrictive. That is great to understand that, but you don't want to get stuck in this. And if we come in too much as the living consciousness, this is like bringing a 1,000-watt light bulb into a 60-watt socket. It can cause harm.
Right.
And our teams work fully in alignment to universal law and natural principle, to the law of one, which is the core understanding of unity consciousness in the full embodied representation and application in harmlessness. Never just self-sovereignty, law of one. We are all one. We are creators. We can do whatever we want. Yes, that is true. But an understanding with that power and authority, what we choose to be, what we choose to do. And understanding there is no right or wrong, but there are consequences for our actions. Even consequences may have a negative connotation, but that doesn't mean you can have positive consequences or negative consequences.
Mm-hmm.
And, we live in a system where the mainstream that has taught us hasn't really known the way. And even the way of those of us that have gone deep into the discovery of the remembrance of who we are and connecting with the angels and guides and ascended masters and all of this, there is still a level of operation that we have been unaware of due to this state of forgetfulness. And staying in the flow, I'm being told I'm deviating too much with this for your original question. And it's funny, this is like the union of the masculine and feminine, the Holy Father principle with the structure, but the feminine principle with the flow.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, we are finding how to bring the structure that's most supportive in real time applications, but being open to the flow with that. But there's still a dance as these polarities are synthesizing and integrating. So, to reel this in here at this level, this has been a very long, ongoing process. When you reach a certain point in your embodiment, the death process does not happen in the same way. We have an opportunity of something called transfiguration and transmigration, which is the full capability to actually take your entire body with you through the gate sites, through the gate systems, and you have the ability, because you are trusted to operate in harmlessness, to come and go anywhere that you please. And this is how many of us consistently grow through our own evolutions. And this is also part of the training for those from my specific family line, because there's many Melchizedek lines and lineages, but it is those of us as Master Templar technicians that are actually sent into fallen systems to be able to support in the bioregenesis, the corrections, the healing of the DNA, and the planetary templates, and everything that it is connected to. A true ascended master is one that has come into this system, fragmented yourself into all the different timelines, all the different aspects of yourself, like your identity here, but the 12 different extensions through different timelines that make up your soul, and the higher level of your soul, and the 12 different aspects of the 12 selves that lead to the 144 extensions of the monadic oversoul. the integration of those 144 aspects of self. And when we get to the Avatar Christ level, which is just now starting to be available, this is another 12 monadic bodies with 144 each, giving us roughly 1,728 simultaneous identities in one system.
Mm-hmm.
This is something when we speak of identity integration, who we are as asleep is never really asleep. It's one aspect of us that entered descent into a dream,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that our thoughts, our words, everything we speak, everything we think, we create. As we descend into the dream with our consciousness, knowing that we are always anchored and supported from the original point of where our the first time we have opened our eyes and been given the gift of the breath of eternal life. But in this, through the descent of consciousness, there is a point where like we can begin to forget, kind of like when you go into a dream and you're aware, but you're not aware you're dreaming. Until that point, you become lucid. And then all of a sudden, you can literally do anything.
Kind of like Neo in the Matrix.
Exactly. Exactly. There's so much I could share on that, but yeah, exactly. So when we're looking at this is something that is the point of awareness is to basically incarnate, descend yourself into the lower octaves, and then be able through the point and process of awakening and remembrance to be able to call every aspect of yourself back. Now, what happens through trauma, through wounding, through warfare, through forgetfulness, whatever it may be, we can have aspects of ourself that get stuck in the timelines, they get stuck in different points in the past or the future or the parallels.
Like
And what
pieces
that
of your soul.
yeah, but if you remember what I'm just saying about what is the soul is a conglomeration of our identities. This is one identity here. And we are
Right.
through all of the different places. And as we are calling them in and bringing them in, we're integrating them. And
Mm-hmm.
wholeness, this is building up our true self. So it's not awakening, it's doing the work to bring every aspect of yourself back in.
Right.
And like in this, it's a process of like learning so much deep self-love and compassion because a lot of these aspects of ourself have been deep in this level of service, which means, there are aspects of ourself that have been deeply traumatized, that have been kidnapped, tortured, raped, abused. There's the timeline wars and genetic wars, the warring of the tribes and the killing and massacres and splicing our DNA to try to use the genetic markers to move through the gate sites, the gateways. There's the forced breeding programs from the first lines of Melchizedek feminine and what happened to those first levels of unions almost 22,000 years ago. There are points that we speak of happened then, but they are alive here in the present. But in this present moment, we have a new opportunity, a new lens free from that. And sometimes we all have our own versions of trauma, no matter, it's just because we had or didn't have something happen in this life doesn't mean we didn't have or have that happening presently in another aspect of ourselves. And those points can be locked in. We can be fighting our own internal selves, or we can be completely disconnected. And yes, this is what a soul retrieval is, or an identity fragment, is when people can go in and like we in our teams can act. And this is something that there's more and more people that have actually gained this ability. It's a soul is pretty beginning level for stepping into our higher capabilities to
Mm-hmm.
find these fragments and pull them in and then either be able to clear and correct them or once they're coming in to be able to go through your own self reparenting, rewiring of the mind and the psyche and the DNA to be that parent to your own self, to let them know it's safe to come back. And what happens is throughout all the timelines, as we're bringing our pieces back, eventually, whatever timeline is the one that has the higher like number of people that have successfully done this or has the higher amount of people that have gotten every piece back, that's where we call like the heroic destiny path,
Mm-hmm.
where like it is that point in time that seems like it's in the present, past, or future, but it's in the now moment where like everything has been able to get brought back, which means all of the other timelines collapse and we come into a unified template to move forward through the ascension and ascension process here at this level of being.
And in
So
that
I
in that
share,
particular timeline, it's the highest timeline possible, right? Ideally.
yes, Yes, and this is why, here right now where we are at, we are in the actualized timeline, which is the highest timeline that everybody will experience. And
Hmm.
we say this because there are many others that their higher timelines or what they are doing are actually actively going on in the past. This is part of when you have the time access codes, time travel, and all this stuff we think is like used through some crazy technology. It is literally encoded into our DNA as some of our base operational capacities when we understand how to access this.
Hmm.
And so there's a point where, like here in the present, as we get our pieces back from these times and we get to witness the groups or tribes that are still struggling, playing out that war, we come here, new face, new identity. They don't know who we are, what's going on. We understand. We covertly try to navigate to see where their consciousness is at here. Now, those individuals, for instance, some of the really fallen race lines, some of the Black Sun groups behind the Vatican, some of the Belial Sun groups that are, no, 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 okay, not to go into all the names or anything like that. These are all different factions of our family. But let's just say, like, there are some of us, right? Some of these lines, like all the fallen angelics, dark extraterrestrials, all were very advanced, benevolent beings before. And
Hmm.
it is during the timeline wars and through the fall. So there's a point where here now they've lost their consciousness, they've lost their soul, they've shut off their heart. A lot of them genetically modified the DNA to shut out any opportunity of connection and communication from 12th dimensional and higher level consciousness, such as myself and our family and those that represent our foundation and that are here to help awaken and provide the bioregenesis support for the 12 strand base DNA activation and integrated embodiment that is the birthright of every single one of us that are here on this planet at this time. It is
So
one of
what
the
does that have to do with the reptilians?
so reptilians, and it's so funny. We're jumping around so, but like okay, so the reptilians. First of all, this is like we can't just look at them as like just like one large species. It's the same as like if people look at because there are races that look at us as humans in the same way, where instead of recognizing or honoring the individual I am God presence that is inside each and every one of us, they look at us as one overall organism.
Hmm.
And that's true in one way because we're a unified consciousness. But if you look at the sickness or the actions of others and they're like, that's the entirety of the human race, we're just going to hate them or ostracize them or attack them or try to eliminate them. That obviously you're going to cause harm to a lot of very positive, benevolent humans that are here to help with this.
For sure.
Now, so the same thing has happened with every line, what you would call the reptilians or what others would call the Anunnakian factions and the many, 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 many different race lines. This is why we speak of the three primary planetary agendas: the Black Sun operations and groups, the Belial Sun operations and groups, and the Christos Dragon Templar, Melchizedek High Priest groups. We call it the Christos Dragon Templar because the Melchizedek faction of our Christed teams was only overseeing the planetary ascension as working as a planetary ascension host race for the last 35,000 years. This contract ended in about 2012 for the transition of what's been going on and the reclamation and bringing forth the fallen consciousness of many of our Melchizedek family that came in here to help. Now, these three agendas, Black Suns can be associated to One World Order. Belial Suns can be associated to New World Order.
Hmm.
Our Christic Foundation teams, just to throw in some sort of order, we just call it the True Earth or New World Order, One World Order, True World Order. Not really what we call it, but True One World, New World, True World.
Hmm.
Like we are so much more than just one world, but we are one sovereign body that is part of many.
Hmm.
We are so far away from anything new. In fact, everything that we see that we think is advanced that we've been exposed to is actually extraordinarily primitive. We've only thought it was advanced because of the warfare that's happened, the genetic convolution, the memory erasure that has happened, especially the last key one about 5,500 years ago.
Hmm.
And like what they did over in Sakata and what they did, in these locations, that then by breaking this down and over the last 5,500 years, targeting every group and order and organization and our families and lines that held this very clear, so that then these other groups of our family that became sick, could start to build out the finite construct that supports them and then begin to reintroduce things like artificial intelligence and gene mapping technology and different things that give us all these promises of being healthy or advanced or making our lives easier,
Hmm.
which all of those in their perfect form are amazing tools for us to use, but become dangerous when we are in this precipice point of awakening, and
Hmm.
our bodies, that neurocircuitry and biocircuitry are all connecting and interweaving. And we need to be present inside. But if we are connecting to everything else around us, it is slowly, tweak by tweak by tweak, modifying us to a transhumanistic agenda, and one that's ultimately an anti-life construct.
Hmm.
So I share these three groups and these three agendas and the groups behind them, because although we call them this, these have been conglomerations of many human and non-human families that have come together to serve these three agendas.
Hmm.
So during this, like, it's one of those things that when we get back to the reptilians and these different sides, like, we need to look at all of this as our family. We
Hmm.
need to look at this like we are mothers and fathers and guardians. And instead of judging another, look at them as that point of a child and what's happened to them. Because no
Hmm.
matter the age, we are eternal,
Right.
which means that no matter if we're younger or older, like, we at the point of maturity are either operating as man or woman, are operating in as self-sovereign mother and father, or we are operating as children, as the child. Because even the fallen and harmful mother and father may be older, but there is harm that has been caused to them at their core, that has taken away their ability to love, that slowly over time took them from beautiful beings. But their hatred, their jealousy, their revenge, the stuff that happened from the wars slowly broke it down. You can see the most beautiful heart-based person, send them to war, put them in enough situations where they're killing people or their people they love are being killed all around them. That changes things.
Big time.
Like, and it's a real deal.
So I have a question. So the dragon race was also reptilian, but they were like the ones that held the most wisdom and carried that king-like energy, king and queen-like energy for the reptilians, right?
Um, Partially, there's so you are right about like the what the dragons hold and the importance and sacredness of the original dragons, and that the fact that the digression of the dragon lines has actually turned into a more reptilian manifestation of, and this is both like legitimate real dragons as well as incarnates such as myself, where I also am a dragon,
Hmm.
but I am so much more than this.
Hmm.
And like, to even understand the concept of what this means is it's a process. But I will say that there are, so first of all, the actual original dragons do not appear in the reptilian form they have been presented with. So even a lot of guides and people that are seeing them, if they are still only seeing the reptilian dragons, this is a marker for what we made a note of earlier. Where are you giving your consent to, and what are you contracting to, and
Mm.
what have you forgotten that has now convinced you that they are your family and they have your highest and greatest good in store, or in the highest and greatest good in mind and desire for that.
Hmm.
Because this goes back into as well eternal versus immortal, an ascended master, and what that means, even though we don't really use those titles because of what people believe an ascended master is. So like, this is kind of weaving back before, but it's like when we come in, we either get our pieces back and ascend out, or we get stuck.
Hmm.
And there are those of us that get our pieces back, that go out, that move on to represent, and the other galactic and universal councils and systems continue their initiations. And then there's those such as myself and others that moved out of the system and then chose to come back,
Hmm.
knowing that we still run the same risk of fragmentation, of separation, of traumas, but we did it before. So it's encoded in the records of our DNA. Might still have to do some trial and error, but we can see things that others wouldn't fully see.
Hmm.
Equally, we came here to be aware of what happened in the past and how that impacted the future, and to come back to the present to use our own free will and consciousness at important historical timeline trigger events to correct those, to
Hmm.
override those, to support us in, instead of falling, wobbling, restabilizing, and rising.
Hmm.
So when we share this, there's this point that when we come back, we are still working through this, because life is eternal,
Hmm.
which means we can come and go as many times we want and need. And there's certain things we need to embody, certain things we need to be aware of, and certain things that need to happen before we are granted that opportunity again. And
Hmm.
a lot of what has been known as the dragon lines and the certain ones that fell and they came through here, they work off immortalized templates, alchemy, energy harvesting, rituals and blood sacrifice, these types of things, in order to be able to actually extend their life hundreds to thousands of years, which
Hmm.
is really, and like, and those of us that are eternal, to try to genetically modify our DNA and system to lock us into a finite limit, what they scientifically call like the Hayflick limit, like 120-year set timing, that your DNA can only replicate that many times before the telomeres like basically unravel and your body can no longer regenerate itself and you die.
Hmm.
But we see people living half that long. Why? We also see those that exceed that age. And why is that? And so when we're understanding this and we're starting to see the progression, those of us that actually have the capability for one of the greatest blessings, we've been locked out of that. And in the Sid, they did this because with enough time, we will always remember who we are.
Right.
Whereas these other groups have wanted to hold that control. They do not align fully to the field of harmlessness, unity consciousness, the law of one. There
Hmm.
was a big defection about 26 to 28,000, we'll just round it up to about 30,000 years ago, between the splits of the law of one. This is where even a lot of the different fallen angelics or a lot of the Melchizedeks actually ended up starting to fall as well because there were giant splits. There was a perceptual belief between the law of one and sovereignty,
Hmm.
that one, as a sovereign God being, that you can do anything you want.
Hmm.
And and then the other side, which is more of what we would call like Luciferian templates and beliefs, free from any biblical or religious sides, but an understanding of the family lines that, it's like when they say like Lucifer was, an angel that was cast out, but used to be, the light bearer or light bringer or whatever. We're just using this as a metaphor, not a historical reference. But the actual history of where that originates from comes from a disagreement, an ideological and a moral, just difference of opinion. This is the same thing we witnessed between Lemuria and Atlantis, that led to not just the one cataclysm that people mix the golden age and the cataclysm together. We got to go back to remember there were three different cataclysms. And there was a golden age at the beginning, but we had three different major cataclysms before the final destruction and the rebuild over in Egypt. So like it's yeah, basically though the belief was that we can do whatever we want as long as we don't cause harm. Whereas those of us were like, we can do whatever we want, but we guarantee not to cause harm. And as sovereign beings, if we do, we take accountability for that.
Hmm.
We're not expected to be perfect. We show up to make that right, to bring remedy, or to learn from this so we know that we don't continue that pattern. Because the issue with this deviation is when we harm another, if you really understand the law of one, you are inevitably harming yourself. There's no way around that.
Absolutely. Hmm.
And so it's like it's really, and think about how many people on this planet will hurt another person or be hurt by another person instead of using their voice or like speaking and trying to make it right. They just cut, block, run away, be like, oh, I made a mistake, but I'm just not going to talk to that person because people don't want to take accountability. They
Right.
don't want to actually look at what that means because sometimes it's hard. And I know all of us can fall into that as well. It's literally training and self mastery just to look at when we make a mistake, release the judgment, the blame, the shame, and recognizing it can be difficult when we got others in the same place that can't look at their own stuff. So now they're projecting and making you think what you did is so much worse. When in reality, they're only judging because they haven't forgiven themselves for what they've done here or what they have done prior or in the future that's also part of the prior.
Right.
Because,
Because it's not, the time isn't real and it's not linear.
and a lot of people literally do not remember who they are, do not have access to their memories, and are not accessing even a fraction of 1% of their true potential because not only what we speak of the war that's now finally ended and what we're navigating through this for the planetary unveiling, but it's because as you awaken, you have those memories back.
Hmm.
And they will become part of your life. And it's an opportunity. If we can love ourselves so much to recognize that's not who we are here in this life, we get to choose. We always get to choose who and what we want to be. And sometimes we've given consent and contracts to allow others to script and choose our path and our reality, especially many of those that have claimed to be God. and many that
Absolutely.
what God actually is. So there's a point of reclaiming all of this. There's the point of the choice point. And this is the point of when people can stop being afraid of themselves, but look at themselves and take accountability for that. It might be hard, but as soon as we integrate that, we bring in another soul fragment. We get more of our memories, we get more of our abilities. We start to actually see what is real inside of us and right in front of us.
Hmm.
And the more we deny, the more we bypass, the more we gaslight ourselves or block it out, then we actually are spiraling ourselves deeper into this fall and reinforcing this belief pattern life after life after life, especially if you still are in the disillusionment and belief that life is finite.
Hmm.
Now, I share this though because, and like part of the Melchizedek races and even the groups that came in way before and our teams that are here now, it's been contracts to come in to help us get to this point.
Hmm.
Because just like the dragons, the original, and this goes into the reptilians and the other groups, like the original dragons were not the reptilian ones we see out here. They're actually much more, they have a lot more like cetacean and avian and feline genetics.
Mm.
So like it's actually closer to a lot of the Chinese depicted dragons, the Asian dragons. There's a lot. I mean, there's many, many different kinds,
Right.
first and foremost.
Hmm.
And so, but when we're speaking of like the originals, the wisdom holders, like the ones that are the keepers of the song lines and the dragon lines, and that are here to oversee as giant level protectors for our consciousness, our planet, our galactic system, from the very origination point of the universal creation. Like these are the ones that it's actually, have you ever seen the show, I think Disney put it out, Raya and the Last Dragon?
Yeah.
Those dragons in there are actually one of the closest depictions I've seen put out through media of the
Mm.
actual original dragons.
I like the way those look. Those are really, those are really cool.
Yeah. And so those that have digressed over time genetically have taken on some of these more appearances. Just like a lot of the fallen angelics and beings, many of them used to have much more human like appearance, what we
Hmm.
would know as human. But through, just like if somebody just is poisoning themselves or is really nasty, you could look at them and they could look like some gremlin that's like aged 100 years, if they're like really toxic to their body and in such a negative state or really traumatized. But you take that person back and you love them and you help them through that and you make them stoked and passionate about life and you start to see that light coming back, like the body will naturally start to come back to its perfected image.
For sure.
And it's why, like, it's and so it's like one of those things that there's just been a lot of dynamics, a lot of history that has occurred and happened. The primary dragon representatives on this planet, I mean, there are like our dragons, the dragon lines that I come from were largely extinct and massacred from this planet. And
Hmm.
in that, you had a lot of the red dragon groups and the black dragon groups and other different dragon groups. They like presently right now, like the red dragon groups, a lot of them operate through Asia, through the Philippines, through different locations that are, let's just say some of these ones are at the top oversight of human trafficking and slavery and and drug distribution and all of this.
Hmm.
Whereas like the black dragons and a lot of these groups are really deep in sacrifice, pedophilia,
Hmm.
human rituals, like much more on what we would call more of like a satanic principle, more
Right.
so Luciferian side.
Hmm.
And so these are different views. And when we speak of the sovereign agreements, because the wars, the split, we would call like the Lucifer and Michael wars, is just a template to connect with. And what's happened over this last precession of the equinox, like this last like 26 to 30,000 year time cycle,
Hmm.
is the same thing we're seeing here and now, where we witnessed just like a couple years ago down in South Africa when all the representatives from the New World Order and One World Order came together and their actual came together in their form of unity.
Hmm.
Yes. Okay. Sorry. There's some. I see why this is going this direction. And let's just say, for a baseline of understanding, before we go into the history of this and what's legitimately happening and like where we are at right now,
Hmm.
they have this belief, though, because of the levels of contract and consent from what they set up with the Vatican and the Black Sun Church to establish the world's first trust, claiming the Pope King of the Earth and actually binding every single person, their soul ownership into this trust. Like a lot, the same ones that then not only built the Vatican but created the entire Islamic religion, trust groomed the Prophet Muhammad, made it seem different. Two sides of the same coin to try to take over the gate sites Italy, fifth gate site. Middle East, Temple Mount, second gate site, and its
Mm-hmm.
connections to the Easter Island, Chile, and just different, and over here onto the East Coast of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they have their belief that as long as you are sovereign, like this is why certain ones like myself and others couldn't be touched. We could only touch ourselves, or we could only harm ourselves, or fall into the beliefs and projections of others that we're still asleep, which works. It puts us into awakening and puts us back into sleep or stasis at this point.
Mm-hmm.
But they have the belief that as long as you are sovereign, then you can do anything and they won't do anything to you as well. Like as long as because there's a lot of these groups, and we speak of more like surface level, like the Illuminati or those types of groups, that people that are maybe more mainstream, it's like not all of them are as black and white like evil that we would see. And there's not evils, I don't even want to use that term, but not all of them make the same decisions. They are
Mm-hmm.
aware of each other. Like I've got deep friends that have sat on these councils and organizations. They're not into the pedophilia, they're not into the sacrifice, they're not into mass death. In fact, they actually want to help. Got their own ways to go about it with their trusts in Dubai and over in Russia and different locations. Like they've got their own ways of trying to do it, and it's not as efficient as we want. But then there are others that are involved in extremely dark arts.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole thing is don't tell us what to do, and we won't tell you what to do. You
Right.
let us do this harm. This is our world. We're sovereigns. And do your own thing. And anybody, which they view the billions of people on this planet that is not sovereign, that keeps rejecting what I am saying or what we are saying and wants to continue to reinforce these delusional beliefs that have been imposed upon us from family and teachers and governments and leaders and religious leaders that have no idea what's going on. Otherwise, our planet would be very different right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I also just want to say, because I know we're sharing a lot of historical sides and connecting a lot of pieces, and it is important in a system that has been based off dualism or dualistic understandings to understand both sides. Each one has emotions, and each one can be morally more or less what we would call right. Um, but this is never about an us versus them. We're not fighting anybody, and we don't need to defend ourselves anymore. Because
Mm-hmm.
if we fight or if we defend, we are playing this game, and that is war. And if we want to be who we are, we will lose on that path. If we want to digress our heart, if we want to slowly sell parts of ourselves away for a finite existence, then that is a path that can be taken. That
Mm-hmm.
is the path, the same as what we're speaking about the fallen reptilians, the fallen dragons, all of this. And also recognizing that in each one of these race lines and groups, there are the children, there are those that have, come forth from these lines that are not choosing the same thing their parents or their grandparents or their elders chose.
Right.
So
They're
once
they're
again,
breaking the patterns.
yes, and there's a lot of these ones that are actually trying to help. Once again, they're not as efficient. They're trying their best though, because
Mm-hmm.
they're coming out of a construct, and a lot of them, like these families, are like tortured them since they were children. Like it's like the ways to indoctrinate and bring people into this level thing. Like if you really, it's not just as black and white as like those people or those groups are evil. It's really sad when we understand what has actually happened. But this is the point of reclaiming who we are as self sovereigns. Because in doing so, they cannot and will not influence us. They cannot manipulate us in the same way. Because for them to continue, they do have to operate on like at least a core principle and understanding of natural law, which means like they know if they violate too many of those laws, like what we would call karma or just divine consequence will happen.
Mm-hmm.
So they have found a way by erasing our memories to get us to play their game where they're actually not as responsible or in the same way. It's kind of like literally, even in today's world of sexual distortions and promiscuity or whatever the word would be, like let's just say you want to, you have a kink of like bondage and wanting to get beaten and everything. If you go in and beat somebody and do whatever you want to them, you're going to go to jail in this life. Like you just caused harm.
Mm-hmm.
But if somebody just signed a contract saying, you can actually do whatever you want to me, maybe they
Mm-hmm.
didn't understand what whatever you want to me means.
Right.
Like these fine print, the contracts, the consent means, hey, actually, I can do all of this because you said it was okay.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with that now. Now,
Mm-hmm.
you might act out from that trauma and traumatize others, and you didn't consent to this. So now you're shortening your lifespan and creating all these negative karmic events, but we actually gave you a choice.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, we've always given you a choice.
Mm-hmm.
And like, what are you choosing? This is the same reason why these groups and organizations haven't just been stopped by God. People are waiting for Jesus or God or angels to come stop it. It's not how it works. You have free will. We can't make the decisions for you.
Hmm.
And if you do not know why you made that decision and are ending up in this place, how can we trust you to move through the gate sites to go anywhere you want when you may actually bring that issue, that infection, that harm to another civilization, to another
Hmm.
group? And
Right.
this is why our system has been on quarantine. We need to know and make sure that people actually understand why they chose something and why they are choosing something new. And that's once again not new. It just seems like that because it's different than what we remember, but it is at the core of all that is real and true. And we get to choose that.
Right.
And sometimes that path of awakening can be hard, but it is the greatest blessing of all time.
So I have two questions for you.
Totally. And this is actually great because normally when these streams, I never want to break a stream because each one holds such important sequences and codes. But at the same time, to deliver this in the way that's going to be received, I have got to start to be able to modulate that energy. So, me taking a breath, one single breath, seems so long for me. But in any breath that I take, I trust you, my brother, that we are bridging at a point for many people to receive.
For
So
sure.
if I breathe and that's the point, or even if I'm talking too much for you to bring in what you are feeling to guide this stream, we're flowing with that. And at the same time, I just ask you because I trust you with leading this on the guidance of sculpting what is here for everybody that's trusted you to join this podcast. And at the same time, if there's a stream where a breath or a pause is taken, to allow that space, just even if it's momentarily, to
Mm,
integrate within the field because
absolutely.
what we are seeking is a very, 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 very small aspect of what is actually being transmitted from those that are in their heart right now.
Mm,
If
hmm.
there's triggers, tension, all of this, we ask you, family, please just breathe through it. If there is a judgment coming to me or anything that I am saying, please just learn to find that compassion and love for yourself. Sure, maybe I am crazy. But we're long past that. This is the time for things to be seen, felt, and witnessed. And I promise you, if it is triggering you, there is a part in you that wants to be free, and the part of you that is in slavery is fighting against this. It's the same thing like those tests with the dog. You put a dog in a cage and open it, it'll run free. You put a dog in a cage and electrify it over and over and over and over, and then open the door for it to be free. It doesn't want to leave anymore. It doesn't know if it's going to be punished. It just finally is like, the pain stopped. I'll just stay here. So, like, if you're getting triggered, I promise you, because I know who I am and I know what we know is true. And I also know the things that are unveiling themselves and the variances of my truth, your truth, your truth, brother, like all of it,
Hmm.
because our truth is relevant to our personal reality experience. And it's time to get out of our egos, into our centers, into our heart, to remember what actually is true. So, with this and for this, if you are curious in your heart, just like they say, Joshua used to say, you know, I'm paraphrasing this stuff. It's just my own words that come from my own DNA and memory, but like the gateways of heaven are inside of you. Like your body is a temple. You access heaven from inside. And with this, you also can only move through there if you have the innocence and purity and heart of a child. But once again, a child does not mean you're a little kid still.
Hmm.
It doesn't matter how old you are. And the biggest, greatest thing that a child has is curiosity. So open and trusting to the parents and those around to have their internal foundation. So even if you do not believe this, open yourself with curiosity. Ask the questions. And I promise you, if you care to know what is true, this will be revealed to you. And this is no longer a discussion of who's right, who's wrong, who's going which way or what way. We've always been here together. We have gone on a large series of arcs and we are coming to the convergence point. And right now, all it matters is for you to desire to know what is true. And whatever starting point, if you are like, this guy is absolutely crazy, Or if you're like, this brother is speaking the deepest level of truth that I already know and I can feel it, even if I can't remember it, awakening something in my body, my DNA, and my soul. Whatever that is. Don't just think I'm crazy and reject all of it. Don't just think I'm speaking the deepest level of truth and believe everything I say. Listen to the words, read the energy. And if you want to know what is true for you, ask the questions and begin this path now. And I promise you, if you put everything you have into proving me right or proving me wrong, you will find the answers that will bring us exactly back to the middle fulcrum point. And something will happen within you immediately and progressively as you are ready without it being harmful or damaging to the psyche. So just find a place to start and just do your best to operate from the heart.
Beautiful. Beautifully said, brother. It's
It
also,
may,
I think, about discernment.
yes, discernment is a huge piece of this right now.
Hmm.
It's always been, but right now more than ever, to not fall into fear, understand self sovereignty, but start to ask questions and discern.
Hmm.
And also open ourselves to trust as we are ready, but really come in to trust our own self. And if we are struggling to do so, connect with God fully. And from the heart, though, free from religion, free from beliefs or any other intermediaries. Because at this point, once again, this is a consciousness game. This has been spiritual warfare. And there's many layers and levels. Just because you say something here, what aspects of your unconscious or subconscious or astral body or angelic mind or especially the archetypal mind?
Hmm.
How has your own interpretation and perception of people and life and things and actions and behaviors and authority figures and all of this, like how has this sculpted and scripted the way you are navigating or perceiving reality?
Hmm.
Uh, share that. There was a thread that was coming through that I really wanted to weave together, but it's a little bit longer and I'd probably stumble on a couple different pieces. So, yeah, just discernment fully and awareness with the lesson that the fact that, like, discernment also means go to the core, not just turn around. If you're praying to God, if you're praying to Holy Mother, if you're praying to Holy Father, like, first of all, that's amazing, but what is that to you? Have you actually connected to the original living source creation of everything that is nameless and formless and eternal? Or are you connecting to an electrotonal signature, a harmonic encryption that represents one facet of the living source creation, or one incarnation that is like one identity that is, of course, God, but claimed to be the one that is all? That maybe that created a lot of the religions, a lot of the Sumerian teachings, a lot of these different sides of things that now when we say God, what are their contracts that we're actually connecting to?
Hmm.
Versus like how do we release the names, the beliefs, the perceptions to just fully align to the curiosity and humility, being like, oh, God, I know that there's the source creation of all of this, but I don't know the name. I don't know who am I connecting to. What am I connecting to when I call to God? When I say Holy Father, when I say Holy Mother, what does this mean to me? Because it's personal reality. Figure that out. Otherwise, and it's okay to go back from this basis. Like the gods of the old ways don't want us to question them. They find that demeaning, sacrilegious. They want us just to blindly follow. Our family doesn't want followers. We want equal co creators that are self sovereign, that make their own choice point, that recognize and can see themselves equally with nothing above or below them. To say we are even children or creations of God means we are one with that. So why would we be any less than that? We don't have our kids and say they're less than us because they came from us. In fact, they came from us and they're going to have the foundation that's then going to lead and support us as we are needed. So there is a point, and that's a whole concept we've taught people for years, and it's become increasingly more clear, and we're finding ways to simplify this without people falling into confusion or fear. But it is like trusting that the only thing that will ever cause any harm, separation, division, poverty, sickness, illness, any of that is from what we consent and contract to, what we believe through that, and the energies or forces we continue to give our energy to. there's so much more tthan that. Or was that like a fragmented code, or did that make sense enough for what I was trying to say with that?
Yeah. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And for those people that are trying to figure out like who they're connecting with in meditation, what guides, like do you have any suggestions or guidance for that?
Yeah. And this is interesting because we're dancing in a spiral, and this is going to the very first question that you asked me as well, like how was my path of awakening and awareness? How did I come into this, right?
Hmm.
And it's interesting because we are at a new point where I am allowed to share, but the trajectory of what I was about to share and go into, I'm not fully ready yet for that to be spoken of. I'm almost there. I am there, but I am still learning to acclimate to speak publicly in this way while feeling the energetics and entities and groups that are just from connecting with us, that are working through each and every individual. The parasites, the different consciousness that can cause, so even if somebody here is unaware of it, their field can directly come to those of us that are more aware and sensitive. And so, like, and until we fully operate in our self sovereignty, when we are in self sovereignty, nothing can harm us, nothing can touch us, nobody.
Hmm.
But even if we are 99.9% there, if something comes up and that 0.1% is like, what if I could be, or what if this, what if that, that means we haven't fully gotten it yet. We are learning, but we haven't known it. And it's only when we know it that we can embody it, and it's guaranteed that no one can ever violate that. But if we step out in a way that is not fully sovereign, then or even if we are in our sovereignty, but there's a group or something that comes in that challenges us, and maybe we have the trauma from the last time we sat down with this group after they did the genocide against our councils or our unions. And even if we resolve that so much, if we have even one bit that comes in of that trauma that all of a sudden puts our nervous system agitated or has us fighting or defending, we are no longer sovereign. We have actually stepped out of that.
Hmm.
And this is part of the actual transition, is those that have been fighting even on the more fallen sides, they've been being transited out, and a lot of them are no longer even in their bodies on this planet anymore. There's a lot of stuff behind the scenes
Well,
that even
the Pope just transitioned.
yeah, if anybody followed our War No More Peace Restored through the Master Code 888 sessions that we ran last year in preparation for what we can now run year in the nine, you would have a very clear understanding of why that's happened, and why we also called this down to the direct exact time. And the Pope passing within about 72 hours from the alchemical year of the nine was, let's just say, just like what happened with President Xi. We reported the exact day it was on the world stage. What happened in the Biden administration? There's a lot of dynamics from a lot of people that have been pawns at play,
Hmm.
and the Pope that we saw was holding at part of the unnatural trinity, but was not the actual primary source where a lot of the directives were actually being given or originating from. And so there are, it's not time yet to go in there. I referenced the sessions of what we brought for those that know, but this is still a sensitive dynamic. And like there are some pieces that need to happen between now and April 2026. There's some pieces that are happening just over today and over the next few weeks. Some stuff is going to be happening in July and August. Some big things that are going to happen between September 9th, 2025 and September 27th, 2025, and what this will align from October onward
Hmm.
until we reach the calendar year of 2026, which will still be in the solar alchemical year of the nine, because we are not operating on fixed time cycles or collective beliefs that are actually part of the overall controlled system that we have collectively adopted and believed.
Hmm.
So it is a bridge to align with that of which is known, but just enough of a correction to that of which is true. So the sun has begun its pathway through the ecliptic, um, just about April 21st or 22nd, roughly.
Hmm.
And it varies a couple of days every year because it's not a fixed cycle, it is a natural process. And as that cycle moves, that is what we look at in natural law and cycle as one full time cycle that we experience here at this level. So right now, even though we are months into the calendar year 2025, we have just only recently begun the alchemical year of the nine. And this is the old science of the Essenes, of the Magi, and those that go predate so much deeper than that. Those are just some that are still have their remnants known here.
Hmm.
And it's kind of like when the Essenes broke away, from the Orthodox, like Jewish religion, which all of this is digressive from like where we're at with the Hebrew lines now, from the original Hebrew tribes and lineages. But that, so I'm just actually being asked to take a pause, not in the stream, but in the vocal speaking of this. For those that are really in their hearts, there is something that is being spoken of that can only be received inside. If your higher DNA strands are activated, you will get clarity of exactly what is being shared. And if you are newer to this is a perfect time to begin strengthening your meditation and self reflection, because this is now being streamed and communicated through unconscious, subconscious, and beginning to bridge into conscious awareness. You may begin to think some of these things are your own thoughts or things you are creating. Once again, trust yourself, trust God, and ask the living first source creation of all that has known you from the beginning to help you see what is true and release your connections to everything that you have believed. Because everything that is meant for you will never leave. And brother, I've got to do something that is streaming through. And when I receive that it's okay again, if you could go back and ask the same question that you started to before I started speaking, because that's an important one. But this sequence must begin to be received. And this is something we need to make clear, because if people only look externally, if they only listen to the words linearly, we'll miss what is here right in front of us now. And that's okay. But it's time a lot of us get caught up to speed so we are all synchronized and equally aware of what has happened and what is happening now. From the bridge of silence and stillness, I am now going to speak a language that has been long lost, forgotten, but is encoded in the deepest levels of all of our DNA. This is a bridge to begin to calibrate the internal aspects of self with a linguistic harmonic patterning that can begin to support the neural networks and genetic strands to be able to house and hold and understand the translations of this information. Sinamua kiata, rinama itinaka uke akasha, rama alohai, era mana manu era itinamakauke aku, polaria, poboria, Lumiana, Lumaria, Atlenia, Atlantia, Arayan, Movarian, Paradisia, Nakayo Kumaa, Ninde Tatas Nanda Okishnaviki Nakokama, Lila Barava Kara Ya Sa Taha La A, Dramada Siriana Urlevidamaka Mara 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 Maria. Mua ura mitishti akashe e andure anu hazi. Anu muatishti akaya kura kundara kundare. Kundarama rasha rashalla rashelela lavakendia. Ninano tataria shnikiako. Taya tata Yeshua na mana 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 mona era. Ia ma a maka maji. Maji a aranma arayana a. Ara rama maka maka maria kristalla krista haha. Aurora hama rahata. Isa ruma 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 ka ra ya sa ta a la. It is only in the last stage that we begin to translate into the languages that we speak at this level, but with the separation from the inability to be still, the digression of our own DNA that convolutes our abilities to receive the purity of the linguistic languages within, and the forgetfulness of our memories and understandings. Many times the words we speak can spellcast, limit, cage us. And it is only in the connection and bridge point of this that this is the same tool, a sacred science of vocalization, harmonic expression that will bring all to life and everything, everyone back into a unified timeline of peace and unity and love and prosperity and connection and remembrance and true unity consciousness and harmlessness. So, my brother, can you, because I have certain things being shown, but can you, if you remember, ask the same question that you asked before I began this stream that came through?
Seems like that was a while ago.
It was about
Seems
something
like.
about how people can discern or how people can navigate through here. You worded it
Oh,
perfect.
okay. Okay. So when people connect to their guides and to Yeshua and to Mother Mary and things like that, how do they know that they're speaking to a being that's 100% benevolent and not malevolent? And how can they differentiate between the two?
I'm just getting clarity because things are shifted with where we're at now. So it is a little bit, there's an underlining template for how this has been, but that is not necessarily true fully anymore, depending on the rate of contractual termination um, that has been achieved. And a lot of this has been achieved collectively because of what's happening now that fulfills the same prophecy. It's been the messianic prophecies of Jeshua and many others. And so that was a different question than posed before, but important for me, even me to hear because um, so there's two sides of this. Please keep this side. I guess I will start with your most recent question. Is first of all, um, gosh, this is why it gets come. Every one of the actual original authentic ascended masters and guides that are here and embody that promise to come back at this time, which is every single one of those that have truly upheld this path of peace and have overseen this mission to restore equality and self-sovereignty for us to rise together, like all of us, like the key players are back. So at this point, if you are speaking to anything that calls themselves Jesus, or speaking to anything that you cannot touch, you cannot feel, you cannot see, it is not real. There was a point before the veils and the ascent began, which began the descent of these specific consciousness. This was already a bridge, first of all, because if we are only speaking of the things about Yeshua and the story of Jesus, well, just one example, because there's the Buddhas and there's Kuan Yins and there's all these incredible beings that have walked this planet. But we got a lot of things like, it's like the divine feminine. Instead of really connecting to that divine essence as a solar Christ being, we've got beings like Isis, dark avatars, very wounded, supporting things that are very against the actual feminine, but we forgot. We speak of things of Jesus. That was never a real name. That has been an artificially generated mind control construct. Things that have imposed and crucified everybody that believed a story that was a falsity and a lie. Just like the same wolf in sheep's clothing that led the Christianity movement slowly to every form of their agenda, actually, because hell's not real. It's not, it's a construct, but it was a construct that was created, and everybody that consented to a falsified story and narrative, has consented to be part of that. It's been very hard for people to get out of it. But then we go to the point where does that mean it's all not real? No. They can't fake stories this epic. They can't fake things to get people to give their lives to it to this degree. They've got to use the parts that were true and then manipulate that story to fit their agenda and way of being. We've already seen this with, like, if we're only isolating on one representation of the religious mind control systems on this planet, we already know through history what the Council of Nicaea did and these different sides, but at the very core beginning, like, these words, these teachings were taken from the original transcripts and records and histories and missions. But to really understand the true mission of Yeshua and his beloved Mary that did this as equals, like, to really understand that means you have to remember who you are actually are as man and woman and son. And when I say son, not a masculine or feminine, a unification of that is a living God source creation in itself. You have to understand the actual warfare. You have to understand the actual planetary temple and how your body is one with the planet and the planet is one with you. So you are a temple too. You have to understand a lot of things that are probably not the time for us to go here now, but this is how we begin, because one, the Christ is many. They tried to make it one. The Melchizedek is all of us, even though there are certain lines and lineages like myself that have been trained to come into fallen systems. But they had tried to associate this to one, the Melchizedek, King Melchizedek, the King of Peace. And obviously, a true Melchizedek is a king of peace, but when we isolate it onto a singular identity, we are actually limiting ourselves from the fullness and true reality, and actually a lot of times blocking our own selves out from our own aspects or connecting to our own family.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a point for the understanding. What is the real reality, and what has been twisted to fit a narrative and agenda that has been self-serving, anti-life, and or harmful? What is real and what is not? And these are the points of asking questions, because truly, like, and this is like people, it's a reason why they said, you know, Jesus is a fake name utilized as control. And also, I just want to say this, just like if you understand like sovereign law and like capital maximus and capital minimus, and in a court system, like Peter, are you familiar about like the way that they've scripted the like our names, like that with capital and lowercase letters?
Not in particular, no.
Yeah, like as above, so below, as within, so throughout. These are like this is a convergence of two major topics, but like um when we look at the legal system versus law, because legal it's a practice of law that a lot of the times there's a lot of things that are legal that are unlawful, or a lot of things that are lawful that are illegal.
Mm-hmm.
But once again, consent, what are we agreeing to? And even if you don't know it, you're still playing that game until you get yourself out of it. So, like, let's just say, Peter, your name, born Peter, that's the name you were given, let's just say from your parents when you were born, it's what was put on your birth certificate, all of this.
Mm-hmm.
When anybody calls you Peter, even if they don't know how to spell it, that's what you connect with. Somebody spells your name wrong, you'll tell them that's not how you spell it, but it's connecting to you.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's in capital or minimal letters, it doesn't really matter, because that's how we collectively choose to be. It's just expression, voice, energy.
Mm-hmm.
But in this system that we are a part of, they created something to differentiate that in the legal systems, especially through the UK and here in the United States, like that if your name is all in capital letters, it literally means that you are a dead entity or a corporation. If your name is in lowercase letters, it means you are a living being, a living man or woman. And if you are like, in all lowercase letters, but you like capitalize the first letter of your name, that means you are a man or woman with some sort of responsibility or something that you are accountable for or that's connected with you, but you're still recognized. It could be positive or negative, but you are still recognized as a living person.
Mm-hmm.
Now they do this because when you walk into a courtroom, let's say you got to go in for a speeding ticket, or like something happens, and they're like, and you're like, actually, I wasn't speeding. I know what happened. This is what happened. Da, 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 da. When you get in there and you're waiting for your name and they call you up there, and they're like, Peter, we call for Peter, and you're like, I'm here, Your Honor, and they're like asking to confirm who you are. If they call your name and you say, yes, that is who I am, you have actually consented to the fact that you are a dead person or a corporation. And the judge, you have just given all of your power away because in the legal system, that means you are not competent to tell what is the difference between being alive or dead. Therefore, you are not competent to make decisions for yourself, and your power is now given to the judge to make this decision for you. And you are forced to abide by all of the different things that are in that system. Whereas if you shift it like this and you say, Your Honor, thank you. It's a blessing to be here today. And I heard you say my name, and I want you to know that who I believe you are intending to connect with is here. But I understand and I want to honor your rules and laws and know that in this system, on your paperwork, look at it, in your name, in your bank stuff, your name is going to be all capitals. Like, I know in your system, that actually means I am a dead entity or corporation. And I want you to know I am very clear that I am a living man and that I am here to bring honor and remedy to whatever this situation is. And I would like for you to address me directly and the awareness on record that you are speaking to a living man. And or I would not wish to continue until the documents you have put out change my name from capital Maximus and bring this into an actual form that represents the living entity and presence that I am here.
Mm-hmm.
I have literally, you can look this up everywhere. People are gonna be like, no, 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 no. It's not even a joke. There's a reason why to practice law, you're accredited and certified through the bar, which is like the British association. I don't. It's something in Britain, the UK, where a lot of this has been infected. They've been trying to take our country down. Like, I speak what I know from my experience, not books I've read, not any of this. So a lot of you might have better terminologies, better words, which is why I look into the energies, ask questions. I'll just take everything I'm saying. I might slip up a word here or there, but what I'm delivering is clear. And this is crazy seeming until you're in the position to apply it. And I have literally multiple individuals that were put in positions that when they learned this, because I have my own experiences within the courtrooms and things that I did in a different way, and the judges viewed it straight miracles instead, that they will never look at any person that walks into the courtroom the same. But this is before I had any understanding of what it was. I just knew how to operate in honor and accountability and learning what that actually meant.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but I have had friends that have been in the courtrooms that the moment they say this, everybody stops, they stop the courtroom and they have everybody leave. They do not want people to hear this. And then people have had this discredited because of the fact that they're like, no, I know people that say this or talk about the strawman's theory or sovereign citizenship. If you're a sovereign citizen, you're already missing it. If you call like all these different freeman teachings, you are a man, you're a woman. What is real versus what are fictitious titles that we create for ourselves? And what does that actually mean? And what is the accountability for this? What is the responsibility for this? And so when you're in the situation, if you can uphold this, even if they try to tell you that's not your rights or whatever that may be, as long as you uphold it, they literally can do nothing to you. But any case when people are like, no, sovereignty doesn't work, the government does this to me, they're unfair, I was in there upholding my rights and laws and they still charged me or gave me a ticket or put me in jail. Look at 100% of the court cases that have happened. You will find every point where they finally contract. You take your sovereignty back, I'm here in the court of man. Oh, wait, I just played your game. Now I'm playing as a freaking entity, a piece on the Monopoly board.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wait, I remember I'm on the Monopoly board. I don't have to play your game, but you have to play mine. Boom. I'm back operating as a man. We can contract in and out, in and out, in and out. This is why it is imperative to understand why we are choosing this. So I share this because the name of the individual known as Jeshua Sananda Melchizedek, a blue flame Melchizedek high priest, a direct progenitor and representative of the Christ lines and the Christ tribes, and what that actually means. Incarnated through natural birth, two parents, a mother and father, high priest, blue flame, Melchizedek Essenes, part of the original Hebrew lines and tribes that oversaw the gruel points and a lot of work through the Templar and what was overseen through Temple Mount and many of the surrounding areas and locations.
Mm-hmm.
Path, that story was not just 13 to 30 with the crucifixion ending. Where was the whole 13 to 30? Where was it? And ultimately, what is actually the problem? Why did I not only erase that, but then they changed the name? Because that name they have no right to claim. They can try to copy and manipulate and impose it on others, create another name. You have people know the original names you call that, you're going to start to connect to the actual consciousness. But they claim another name that is just a fictitious title. And then all of a sudden you're playing their game. I'm, just like in the courtroom, you're contracting to that. If you connect to Jesus, this is why so many people, and apparently it was the thing they said in the prophecies of that. I don't want to focus too much on this because this narrative of this distracts us from the real reality of who we are and what's available here for us. But this part that we are speaking of is one of many things that will be unveiled and revealed to this planetary body, and it is happening very soon. And there's a reason for this. And so this is why at this time, if you had asked me this question beforehand, it'd be different. But at this time, literally just look at what's right in front of you. Start to ask as many questions. And just like they say, the Tao that can be named is never the eternal Tao or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
From 8 immortalized lines, like the original immortal line and seven others that like are a mixture of some also very fallen dragon lines, and there's still some representatives from the immortalized high priest lines and lineages that have fallen, but not to the point of acting in the ways that cause harm in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
So like we've all taken some major hits with this, but there is the point where right now, like, how do I simplify this? Anything that has a name or an identity, anything at this point, any of the beings, goddesses, deities, even what people have called the names of the angels, the names of the archangels, the names of God, the names of the ascended masters, throw them all out. If you can understand the code I shared about a name that sounds like your name, that's spelt the same, but in a specific construct that has been consented to, you say that, it puts you into something that can cause harm to you. Doesn't, yeah. So if we understand the same thing, unless you are actually touching, because our actual family, even the angelics and positive extraterrestrials, can touch you. They can be here. You can hear them. You can feel them. But once again, this takes discernment because part of the issues before is you have angels appear. People just go into worship. Worship, warship. A ship of war. We're done with war. Our family is in unity. We choose peace. We choose equality. There's not one of the most high level beings, even those that are the ones that mentored and taught me, that will ever view themselves higher or greater than even the smallest, newest, newborn being. It's
Mm-hmm.
just not how we see it. And so our family actually wants you to question it. We have already begun to have direct contact. When I say we, many of you over this last year have begun to experience your first contact. Others of you that are beginning to work with us or even be guided by God to go through the pathogen and parasite clearing protocols, or what we put together as the pathogen purification protocol. This actually legitimately will be, for many that have yet to see, the very first encounter with actual entities and organisms that hold fallen angelic and harmful extraterrestrial genetic markers that are inside of our body and DNA. This is a whole thing to go about it. The war has always been inside and all around. We try to fight around without knowing what's inside. We've already lost, and it's and I shouldn't even use the word lost. We've already won. It's already happened. And there's nothing to fight for. So it is literally when you are ready and aware, when you can actually meet something equally. If you want to just use the example as, Jesus or Jeshua, if he was there present with you, would you put him on a pedestal and ask him to tell you what to do? Or would you like feel so grateful that somebody you believe stood by you and your highest good is back here with you, and are you ready to stand with him too? In those stories, there were 12 disciples, and they tried to downplay the actual importance of his beloved, who was known as, Mary at that time. But just imagine, it's like Yeshua said, everything I have done, you shall do and greater. But obviously he was a son that was brought in from the higher heavens to support in the illumination of that remembrance. And he came here because there weren't many that were holding that level. And we also couldn't have that many because it was so unstable. It could cause harm to life. This is a process. We knew there was strategy. We knew there was timing. So 12 disciples being taught, initiated, given the gifts to clear parasites and entities and beings out of other individuals, but being initiated, learning how to do that. Kind of like when Peter walks on water, and Jesus is like, huh. It's like when Peter walks on water, and or Jesus is walking on water and he asks Peter, as his follower to like step into the water, and he's like, oh no, like I can't, I'll sink. And I'm just paraphrasing this story, but it's like, I can't, I'll sink, and Joshua's like, Peter, step into the water, come to me, and what happens? Peter starts to step out of that boat and he starts to sink. And like, and he calls out to Jesus and reaches out to Jesus' hand. And like Jesus, is like Jeshua is like grabs his hand and all of a sudden Peter can walk on water. And people, are like looking, oh, it's because of what Jesus did for Peter and what he showed. No, let's look at this in a real way. Or it's because of Peter's faith in Jesus and who he was that allowed him to walk on water.
Mm-hmm.
No. Mixes it up. Look at this. Who in their right mind would step off of a boat into the water if they already didn't 100% believe the person walking on water in front of them, telling him to do it, that they know he never lies and he says honor and accountability? Obviously, he's like, I'm following you. I'm going to trust you. I'm going to step out into this water. So why did he sink? I mean, that's a level of faith and devotion to Yeshua that very few, especially at that time, could even comprehend. Once again, using all of this with the disciples and everything as a metaphor. 12 disciples is more aligned to 12 tribes and 12 Magi, king and queen representatives that oversaw those tribes. And those 12 that are here again, embodied physically, to lead this specifically for all tribes and family to be free. Just planting that seed. But the core of this was not the belief in Yeshua outside of himself. It was the belief that you can do this too, Peter. Step into the water. Oh, wait, you're sinking because you looked outside of yourself. Here's my hand. You're not alone. Trust yourself. Now we can stand as equals, and no wave will rock this boat.
Right.
Nothing, no matter what Jeshua, no matter what any of the other ones came here to do, it was never going to happen unless people chose to do this for themselves too. So over the last couple millennia, it's like when the whole story just, and it's funny you brought this up, but like it just from the whole story of like this return, this second coming, this messianic prophecy, it's like it was always going to happen in a very specific way. Even us here through our foundation, reinstating the new covenant that allows the transmigrational capabilities and us to live in a world and life of peace. Just cleaning some of the energies. I'm feeling some of the energies that are coming through. These are sensitive topics to talk about. Those that do not want this to be revealed. Those that are scared of being judged as the truth is revealed. And then the many that are still deeply ingrained in a way of belief that limits and puts us in slavery, that are slowly being broken free as we provide this key. But like they said, Jeshua's return would come like a thief in the night. Like you said earlier, the children would find them like because this has been a covert mission. This goes into what happened from when we speak of the co-evolutionary peace treaty, and that I am up here upholding and representing, and I need you and I need all of us to get on the same page because we're all part of this. But we have our specific councils and teams here in the States, here in Africa, and Europe, and Asia, and Antarctica, places that will be holding this down and seeing this as we lead this. But like that is the thing, is that like this incarnate and the many others, because it was a weaponization to try to put all of that onto one man. and try to deify him in a way that people would celebrate and worship like a Trojan horse to bring war forth. They said his own people crucified him because they could not see. No, they created a falsified story, wiped the memories, skewed the identities, hoping that when he returned, his people literally would crucify him without even knowing it. Because if that of which was held and the totality of which was represented was gone, we would not be here. It has never been gone, it has always been here. But the past, the future, the present, once again, they have been blended and they have been scripted and they have tried to get us to consent to something that is not true and to actually be the ones that could not see that fulfill that prophecy. Just like Revelations in the book is a mind control insert to try to take events that would happen, but script them and skew them into a way that through collective manifestation would be created. And this is important to speak to because most will not see what is right in front of them. And there are a lot of us that are representing this. Imagine just simply 12 disciples that have already put a key, 12 angelic tribal lines. But 12 disciples, each one learning. Maybe they didn't get it that time. And maybe a crucifixion didn't happen, but maybe Jeshua did leave. But maybe there was another side that happened with their union and the warfare against family and his beloved Mary and their tribes. Maybe something happened that actually had them stay here to separate and to try to divide something, but also creating a presence of the field of the mother that was gone but never fully gone, singing a song waiting to be heard until be found and honored once again. And over 2 millennia, let's just say those 12 individuals and one incredible goddess of a woman that stayed behind, enough to allow this to just come to life. So now 2000 years later, we are still figuring it out collectively, but we're learning quickly. And so many people are ready. And there are those that were the disciples that were initiated that are here to uphold miracles. And there's those that listened with an open ear and an open heart that maybe weren't ready then, but are now ready to hear something new now. And it is like the game of sardines, not hide and go seek. Do you know what the game of sardines is?
No.
It's the opposite of hide and go seek. Hide and go seek, everybody hides, one person goes try to find all of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sardines is the other way around.
One
Like,
person hides.
and everybody tries to find them.
Uh-huh.
And then, and as you find them, then you're part of the game. You don't tell anybody you found them. You're
Uh-huh.
then hiding in that area too, waiting for the next person to come and the next person. And eventually you're like a dozen people stuck in a tiny closet waiting for the last person that's just all by himself. Where did everybody go? They must have found, what am I missing? And then you open the door, it's like, surprise. But in this process, when everybody's been found, it's only the last ones that are going to be like, oh my gosh, it's been here the entire time. But I remember when I used to play this as a kid, I used to be a pro at this. Sardines, I would go, one of my favorite tactics was to go into the closet, into
Mm-hmm.
the costume bin, and I would put myself in the costume bin with all the different things around me, and I'd have like a glove one hand and like a mask on my face on here, and I would just like look like I'm just like a bin of clothes in there. And people would come into the closet. They would come in and like some people would open it, just look around, shut it, go away. After a time, people come back. Some people 2-3 times, and they open it up. They're looking around. They're looking at other things. They look at the thing just over. I'm like seeing my eye through them. They're just like, oh, there's nothing there. And then the times when they come back and they're like, is there something there? And then they put their hand in and I grab it and I'm like, ah, and they're like, ah, on me. And then it's like so funny because then they're part of the game. They're in on the inner secret.
Right.
And so now when I'm still in there, I'm like, don't tell anybody. I'm hiding here. I got a mask. I look like the creepy goblin. And you don't even know I'm a creepy goblin. You think I'm a pile of freaking costumes in a bin. But now everybody else opens the door. Hey, have you seen him? Have you seen him? No, I'm still looking. Shut the door. Go away. Person's laugh. Oh my gosh. Because you can't tell him he's right here. That wouldn't be fun for the game. They got to learn it themselves, And then 2-3 people come. Another person's like, "Hey, did you find him?" No, we're still trying to figure it out. You want to come in here and look? No, you guys already looked in there. I'm gonna go look somewhere else. It's so fun. It's so playful and childish. But this is what we need, and this is what's happening. This is what's happening now. So everything's happening, and those that are ready to see, that are ready to play the game and play equally, not be like, oh my gosh, you are the master of the game. You're like, I found you. Now I'm part of the game too.
Mm-hmm.
And let's have fun with this because people need to choose this themselves, not be told or not do it out of fear. Oh my gosh, Jesus is here. God's here. I'm going to be judged and punished. Change everything quickly.
Mm-hmm.
No, what are you doing right now in this moment? Which one of Jeshua and the disciples and the many embodiments of God, Goddess, of Mother and Father that are now awakening, that will not tell you who they are, but will offer their support, will offer their wisdom, their knowledge, and to see how they are received and how they are treated, knowing that each and every one of us will have this reflected as we remember and awaken, and it will be part of our lesson. And the more we have another come back around speaking the same thing, it's okay to deny it once, but you were told that of which is true, even if you denied it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you question it or deny the truth, then it's going to continue coming around in your life until you see it. And other people's truths to help you calibrate that as part of the spiral. But you have enough of that spiral, and then somebody what's true comes in and says the same thing, and you push it away. It's going to get more and more intense until you think the world or reality is like crumbling around you or out against you. But it's actually only been you've been running away from your own self, or you've been too afraid to look at what is actually here and what is actually going on. And so, to answer your question, though, which was different than the original one, but to be like, what do you know? How do you tell people how to discern for these, different, beings and ascended masters or religious people? Is like discern how you're treating and showing up others. Like, would you just treat those ones different than how you would treat your own sisters or brothers, your own children and neighbors? Like, if there is, why is there a difference? Because if there is a difference, then that means you're thinking someone is greater or less than,
Mm-hmm.
higher than or lower than. So what do you need to be equal with them? Because that's what they need too.
Mm-hmm.
And so we don't want you to be confused. Like, let me say, discernment comes like this. Are you aware of your actual thoughts or not? Can you tell energies versus personal creations versus spell casting or black magic? Are you able to actually take are you aware of the even real history? Are you aware of who you are? Have you identified anything about yourself? And where are you at on climbing that ladder? Like, there are so many things. This is what we've been teaching for years, and we just do not expect people at this point to have that training fully or awareness. Like, those that do have it. That's why we're doing what we're doing. And a lot of us, especially between 2017 to now, have really stepped into it. But for those that are new, it's too confusing. It's too scary. And we just want you to trust and know that you are safe and protected and you are not alone. But there is a timing on how fast we can have this. So ultimately, the discernment is go to God. Go to God, God first and foremost. See yourself as a son and or a daughter. See yourself as a child of God, a living son, unified masculine or feminine with a choice point through natural gender law to be a male or female embodied gender role.
Mm-hmm.
But once again, going back, male, female, both, male, masculine and feminine, female, female and masculine, son, unification of masculine and feminine, God, Holy Mother, Holy Father, a principle of God consciousness, the unification of the Trinity, the living Son, the child, the Christ, the child of God that is you and I. To understand this, we've got to remember who our actual parents are. And not only that, God is our best friend. Truly. There is no punishment. There is no judgment. It is the one that has been with us to witness all from the first time we have taken form, from the first time we have been able to open our eyes and receive the gift of the breath of eternal life and the sacred opportunity to have our partner, our union, the other aspect of ourself that holds this polarity to witness and support each other in physicality. We are the avatar of God. We take action. Where everything is possible, we are that being that creates everything. This is why nothing is impossible if you really know who you are. But also, you don't just do everything, because how do you know if it's gonna cause harm or not? This is vast. This is vast. So, when we begin to understand this, and there's like when we begin to understand this, we can begin to revoke our consent. The first and foremost thing to really begin to know to have the clarity to trust is to begin to identify everything you contracted that you got yourself into that has begun to leave you seemingly figured the way, but being lost. And progressively and collectively, so many of us just being lost and lost and lost until certain ones of us made it out and chose to come back in. Not everybody makes it out and chooses to come back in. This is why, speak of, Jeshua and the Buddha and Kuan Yin and all these different ones that are out there, they're the ones of unconditional love and compassion. Babaji, all these different ones that are like, they're here.
Right.
They feel, and they are unified. And so, like with this, we know, and the only reason we step back into that through the forgetfulness, it's like it's insane to think you can come into this system and reclaim all your souls, all your memories, all of this without the one that knows where everything went and the one that knows the original perfection template of how to bring that in. And sure, we'll let you choose what you want to do with it, but if you just trust and allow it to be and know how to take action accordingly, it's just going to happen. And for like the Melchizedeks, our specific line of this, once again, because every person on this planet has a Melchizedek lineage within their DNA. But those of us that came in, we are like the mechanics, the Templar technicians. We are the ones that there was an automated system. Everybody's supposed to come in from birth. What happens from birth? What happens like what the actual way children are brought in. Unions come together. The progression from birth to 11, 11 to 22, 22 to 33, 33 to 44, 44 to 55. At which point, if you complete all of those, you're actually an elder on this planet. But once again, most of what we call elders are actually still children. Or even the really advanced ones maybe in their teenage years, and we all know how many mistakes we make as a teenager thinking we have every answer figured out. So there's this point though that it's like, just if we understand that we are equal to all of our family that have walked this path, and that now we are the children that are becoming man and woman that have been asked and trusted to lead this and to be this and to show this and to create an even more secured foundation for the children that are here now and that are going to be coming,
Mm-hmm.
because that is critical. It's so important. And this is why, like, we won't, there's just so many things that go into this. We could go into a whole topic of that, about what's even required to bring in the higher angelic templates, the preparation as a mother and father, the work for the unions, the understanding of the children that have been brought forth so far and how they are going to lead and carry this, but they are waiting for us. And there's a grouping and a line of children that are just starting to get prepared to come in from this year onward, that we're never going to actually come into a body while there was war still on this planet.
Mm-hmm.
Because those patterns collectively, 555 as this comes up, like it doesn't matter even if you're a child, like sure we have purity, but everything that's happened on this planet, when you incarnate and come through the womb matrix of your mother, you receive those imprintings into your DNA and in through the morphogenetic field as part of the planet, so it's part of you. Nobody comes in here free of that. We've just worked through that progressively. And that's why the children with the progressive levels of purity are having less and less and less of this, or are being born in at the intensity of the bottleneck of the ascension process, because they're either very strong or their genetic lines are huge, or the actual unions, the divine unions, the pairings that have been coming together to learn healthy communication, that have been learning to look at the patterns, the addictions, the things that they will not pass on to their children.
Mm-hmm.
Like these things, doing that work over and over and over to create as pure of a template as we can. So as we rise, we have set up a ladder to heaven, that as each one awakens and reach the necessary age, it's a frequency that's carrying us all the way. Too much too fast couldn't happen, but just enough. And there's no comparison, because beginning to end, when the last comes in and this happens, it happens immediately for all of us, like a twinkling in the eye. It can just be a crazy build-up process in the meantime.
Mm-hmm.
So once again, contracts and consent, to really discern, go back to God. And the first contract of consent is release everything that ever even gave you the perception or awareness in this life of God, Christ, or any part of like what we believe to be the original source of creation. It is nameless and eternal. Release every contract and consent. And as a quantum contract elimination specialist, one of many things we do, this is something we help, because we know that a lot of times people have a hard time even figuring out what they got into.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but like when you can do this, you begin the first and just because you might not fully agree with what is being said, but if you are self-assess, you may not fully agree with me, but unless you can say directly, you know 100% who you are connecting to or what you are connecting to, and you are 100% not just saying you know, but you are embodied in that gnosis, and that is something no one can take from you unless you are at that point. Accountability and self, just being honest with self, is like, I don't necessarily believe what this Melchizedek guy and his brother Peter are saying, but I also can't just blindly say I 100% know what is real with this. This is why we had so much debate and philosophy and, all these things about religion. What happened? Was the crucifixion real? Was not? Whatever it is. And it's just using these examples. So if we can keep that openness and recognizing that nothing is going to judge, when people are like, it's sacrilegious and you go to hell if you deny God or Jesus when you know it. No, that's part of their construct. We want you to know so that you can never have a hologram or another being or a really advanced thing that can do abilities and show you all this stuff and speak really fancy, that you're like, that's who we follow and lead. In fact, that's literally prophesied as the return of the Antichrist and the entire war. And that's what showed and prepared. Like, we don't show it in that way. It doesn't empower people. We've already seen the harm that causes. So if we can say, hey, I believe that God or the Holy Mother or Holy Feminine or the Holy Father or whatever it is, I believe that, or Jesus in Christ, I believe that this is real. But like, I don't know, I can't actually say 100% what is true. And I'm done just making up stories or figuring out what fits best at the moment. I'm ready. I'm really ready. I'm not going to even be wrong or right. Who on this planet even knows what that is?
Right.
I just want to know what's true for myself. And I'm ready. Like, and if you're really ready and you ask that with the sincerity of a child, the gateways of heaven are going to begin to open within to show you the clear, illumined path to lead you home again. And it's the most real, intimate, personal thing we can ever experience. Like, discernment, we can be taken in and out. I got trained coming, having my consciousness and taking in and out of multiple artificial intelligent realities, far more advanced than any of the technology we've ever even had spoken of that's seen on this planet. And this is a big thing that got a lot of our Melchizedek family that led into the fall. But to go in and out, because these artificial worlds can seem more real than the world around, there's an energy and encryption of frequency. Even though it seems literally more real, more crystalline, more perfect, it's not. It's an artificial construct. And then our actual home and the many octaves and levels, those layers and octaves of the higher heavens and that of which is deep within, like, each one is progressive in a way that is like unfathomable to the mind here. And it is the purest, most real and true thing. And as we begin to remember this, every step we take closer to releasing the old stories and beliefs, trusting this path of God to have us see, because they want us to know who they are fully. Like, if you are a parent and you have a child, you don't want the person that drives by says, I got candy in my van, I'm actually your dad or your uncle or your grandpa, come get in. You just haven't met. Just be like, oh, that's my family, I'm getting in there. We want the discernment, like our children know who we are. Look at what we'd operate. Look at how we'd say, don't just blindly believe what's being told to you. Like, we want you to learn this for yourself. And how do we learn that without stepping back and giving the opportunity for you to learn it as well, knowing that we have been holding the space, holding the field, so we would never allow it to actually get as bad as it already has in many other systems. So part of this is also an educational lesson, so that none of us, especially the ones that think, I could never do this to somebody, I could never hurt a person in this way, I could never fall to that darkness. Well, guess what? Chances are parts of you already have. And if you say you never could, then you're not being real with yourself. And these are the back doors and blind spots that are utilized that can unknowingly push us to cause harm. And by the time we've done it, we may not have seen it. And by the time we recognize it, that level of shame or disbelief of self can push us back so far. So this is why no judgment of self, but realizing it's not the same as it was even days ago, or I should say weeks ago, and it's shifting every day. This is not a simulation. This is not a game. This
Right.
is the real deal. Every action counts. And it's not just physical. It's time to remember that every thought you have, every word you speak matters. The emotions and what comes through. And sure, there's a different level of downset, but this is why we have a delay. Many people don't even consciously create their reality, or no, yeah, they don't consciously create their reality. It's being created for them, or it's subconscious or unconscious. People are constantly creating and collapsing, creating and collapsing, creating and collapsing.
Hmm.
When you get to a certain point of proficiency, like after almost 6 years of my initiations, I was given access as a Melchizedek high priest to be able to access one of my most sacred capabilities and abilities. I gotta be careful sharing. Can I share something about that? Okay. Just what is a safe thing? Share this. Time delay. I can share time delay. Uh Sorry, brother. Hold on. Some things we're still kind of sharing about time. No. All right. I can't actually share about this right now. That just share for another time. But let's just say that there is a point that we do have a delay, like all of us do. As you get keys to creational capabilities, that delay shortens. And I can't. Sorry, I always try to find a point to share. I'm like, can we bridge that? No, no, no. Timing. It's all been about timing. But
Okay.
there's a form of delay. And like that's for our benefit. It's for us to create and to assess any misalignment or thing before we correct it, before it becomes the living reality.
Mm.
And so like as we're doing this, we have, as a child, you're like, you're not expected or held to a certain level of responsibility. You're not expected to hold that. You're learning. But as we get older, it's like, okay, what are your actions? You're accountable for your actions. Okay, you're accountable for your words. Maybe words and actions a child can learn. Maybe you get a teenager, you start learning about the subconscious and unconscious. Your thoughts create the health or well-being in your body. Your thoughts create the abundance and connections in your life. Your thoughts create a positive or a negative experience. So your thoughts are obviously influencing you. But
Hmm.
at that point, it's like our thoughts aren't obviously that strong, and it's a process. We have our thoughts. We start to feel it. We say it. That's creating even more than we act it. It's a process, a sequence, alchemy to create that into being. But the faster we grow, you can be like, this is what I think, and you speak it incorrect. If it was immediate, it could be catastrophic.
Hmm.
Or you could literally, be like knowing, like, no, I've now learned all this. I know what I want to do. But on the deepest levels, if you have thoughts doubting yourself or having other things come in, it's a blessing to have that delay. So you're not just creating every little micro thought and deviance.
For
And this is
sure.
why it's important to understand what our minds are versus what are not. Because with the parasites, bacteria, mold, fungi, all of this, as you begin the pathogen purification protocol and really do it, like you start to realize a lot of our thoughts and beliefs and personal needs are not actually what we need or what we think or what we believe.
Right. Yeah, it's about
Like
clearing the body to become more crystallized, more
100%.
crystalline,
Mm-hmm. And
more
then
raising the
not just
frequency through
clearing
that.
it, and also not just clearing it, but learning how to clear and reprogram. Kind
Hmm.
of like I saw this thing this other day, this parasitic wasp. It's like a caterpillar. They're eating, eating, eating. They build their cocoon. They become a butterfly or a moth, whatever it is. And like, but these parasitic wasps, in the state of them, gathering their food, infect them. Then they start to grow inside of them. And then as they're doing that, they then break out of them, but they don't want to kill them. So they find a way to go inside, reprogram their mind as they're growing, and they're slowly reprogramming everything about the caterpillar. Then they come out, but they make sure it's alive. But this caterpillar is now alive and it's a zombie basically. And it stands guards over their vulnerable parasitic nests. And so it doesn't do anything, it doesn't eat, it doesn't sleep, it sits there, and anything tries to come near it, the caterpillar starts to freak out. It's under control to protect the thing that took over it. It's alive, but it's not. It got it out of the body, but now it corrupted the mind, which means you have to literally reprogram everything. And like the Melchizedeks, we came in as manuals to build. It's like building a car from the ground up. Most
Right.
people can drive a car, but have no idea how to do that and don't need to. This is why we have mechanics or support,
Right.
But those of us that needed to, we did have to build it up, and that made it a lot more complex, a lot more difficult. So part of the warfare, the back and forth. Whereas now, part of the difference is we are into and entering into the first reemergence of the automated system, which naturally allows all of us to do this. We will see this with the children and everything that's there. But like, this is also makes it our responsibility to recognize the world may seem the same, but it is different. And that it is now our responsibility to ask questions and to start to release every story and belief. Come back to God, like we've been saying. Start to ask questions like you know nothing. Truly. Be like, I know nothing. Because there's not a point where you just know nothing. I know people say enlightenment's when you know nothing and nothing is everything. Those are stages of enlightenment.
Hmm.
Spoken from those of partially ascended masters. They got a lot of their pieces back, but did not get all of it. It is a cycle. It's not as black and white. But there is a time where you know everything and nothing simultaneously at the same time. Because what is true or real at one density, octave, dimension, or level may not be true in another. And there's many reasons for this. But there are base principles that we call universal laws, not a way of operation, but the foundation of creation. And as long as we align to them, we can do everything. If we violate them, we will eventually harm our own self. But it is through a process of accountability and self reflection to like remove the contracts and consent, because I promise you, even when I had it, it's crazy how many different entities and beings have claimed themselves as God in this system. So you call out to them, you're getting all of it channeled in. It's what's happened with a lot of new age ceremonies and a lot of different things that have gone on. But like the moment we start to actually understand this, we're calling back all of our energy. This means we also just say to blanket consent, anything we've given our energy to, we call back at this time. It's like your parents. If you run away from them, and they really love you, they're going to want you to come back. And if they really honor you, they're going to give you your space to figure it out, knowing you'll figure it out and you'll come back. And if you're
For
getting
sure.
too far off the path, they're going to send somebody or they're going to come find you to come help pull you back as you are ready to listen to them. And sometimes those children won't listen to their parents. They need their favorite aunt or they need one of their, best friends to come and give them a lens of like, hey, this is what's going on and just come back. Like, we love you. We care about you. We're here to help you. Everything is here to work in our favor, to remember who we are, what our capability is, and to be able to come home. All of it is here for us.
There it
Even
is.
those, what?
I said, there it is. That's the key.
It really is, dude. And to try to simplify this, because this is like a science in itself, is just literally like release the need to look at anything outside of us and realize you are literally the most advanced being in this entire creational system. And everybody wants to see you be you. Everybody wants you to be your unique, authentic, individual self and does not want you to pretend to be something else.
That's right.
Everybody wants you to own your identity, your name that you were born with that represents all of the ancestral lines that made it possible for you to be here, that you are in service to. And only when you get to the 100% honor and acceptance of yourself and all that has walked before you and that is inside of you that you took on, may you then be asked to represent the next higher octaves and levels of the collective, universal, and soul families, as I do as a Melchizedek, but may or may not be the same name, because we have successfully gotten the Melchizedek mind back. And the last piece of this was to get the Melchizedek solar Christ feminine consciousness and logos back. And it's in the full process of that for these twin Melchizedek sons to come into a literal unity, triunification, and the hosting race for that's over. So these will be the ones that are here. There was a promise to the Melchizedeks, no matter how bad it got, you will never be forgotten, and we will provide the rehabilitation support for you to come back from this. This is what it has been from 2012 to 2024 as the Crystal Star hosting race, and our living foundation are now here to begin to lead this. And it all had to happen starting after 2024 into 2025, after me and other Magi legitimate Royal Grail representatives and lines reach the biological capacity of what we could begin to access in our DNA and biocircuitry starting from the age of 33 onward.
Which is where you're at right now.
Yes, November was my 33rd birthday. And I
Beautiful.
say this because it's been astonishing to see, and it's like, okay, whether in 33s, 44s, 55s, and those that are stepping into 22, those are the big ones that we're like, all right, let's get you guys in alignment. And the
Hmm.
33 are the ones that are going to come in. And as we're crystallizing this, we're about to have so many authentic elders on this planet. We are going to be so supported in the wisdom with the wisdom keepers and everything. It's going to be amazing.
It
But
already
literally,
is, man. We already have a lot of them online, and it's really more and more coming online every year.
exactly. And remember, the awakening or coming online is a part of the process because the embodiment sequences, even what's capable at the age of 33, there has yet to be one person on this planet at this time that is actually able to fully embody that template. This year is the very first year it is even an availability. So when we're speaking of the 4455, there is still a point of catch up that is happening. Because in full actuality, most of the collective has not has well, it was before most of the people had never even fully moved into what you were supposed to be by the age of 11. Because by the age of 11, you are supposed to fully know who you are as a man and woman. You are supposed to fully understand and operate self sovereignty. You are supposed to fully begin to understand where you come from, your tribes, your star maps, all of this, and what you're about to do in this incarnation.
Hmm.
And then you begin from about 12 to 22, from that in between, from 11 as you go through it all the way to about 22, 23. You're bringing in your soul. You're now
Right,
actually connected, like they're learning, you're exploring, you're bringing that in,
right.
and so collectively up until really just this last year, the majority had not even made it to where you're at by age 11.
Hmm.
Now we do have a larger amount of the collective body as we have been re-ensouling this planet, the covenant of Paliador, to reclaim all lost souls of Tara, all the fragments, to bring them all back home into a unified state of awareness and healing. Like, that point is now being represented through the ensouling of the body, which means now a larger collective are of this planet, which is now becoming the majority, are in contact and connection with their actual soul body. Doesn't mean that there's still fragments or pieces that are being needed, but this is now for the first time allowing we're we're like billions in the soul body. We're like billions in the soul body that are aligning to this. We are like in the millions of those that are starting to work on the oversoul process, which would normally happen between 22 to 33. And we've got, I can't give an exact number, but the age that we're in from 33 and the ages onward from that point, there's less than 100,000 people on this planet right now that are starting to actually work at that level.
Hmm.
And the highest point of that, there's only going to be a certain amount that will hold that at this point. Because once again, it's all frequency. And it's not
Right,
higher or lower, just the bigger pillars transduce this. It's like my uncle's the one that invented live streaming. So like beforehand, you had like they would just like stream an event to all of the different TVs and boxes. So you had the lags and the delays, or people couldn't get that, right?
right,
Like he created this simple thing because it was just like right in front of him. It's not like he had this crazy way about it. He's just like, what if you just took that stream and created a device that receives that, could stabilize that, and then send it to a bunch of devices?
right.
And that's why we can do streaming the way we have without the same lags and stuff like that.
I
It's the
love it.
same thing. There are those through legitimate Avatar Christ contracts that literally, I cannot say, but can I say that? Can I say it? Okay, I can't give the number, but I will say it's less than 1,000, significantly less.
Hmm.
Less than 1,000 that are going to be allowed to operate here because too much of it's a lot of initiations. Once again, when we're talking about level of creational capability, those are the ones that will alter reality immediately. But it's not
Right,
just the control state. And we need others that are still learning to get their soul bodies, or that are newer, that are like God babies, angel babies.
right, right.
They're learning,
Little cupids.
So yeah, yeah. So, there's a point of transduction where it's like God, the universal system, then to those that are the representatives of the tribes that actually hold that in their DNA. And I am one of these ones. I can say that. And then those of us that work together in unity, we stream this through our genetic lines and the tribes that we represent. And all of the councils and sub councils that are part of that, the high priests and high priestesses, they are now taking that through their own side, through their own unique embodiment, figuring out how we're going to bring this to life, how they're going to teach this to the next set of tribes, and then it goes down to the next level. And
Right,
all of us are working as one. It's not a hierarchy, even though there are those of us that might seem to have more responsibility, which
right.
obviously not joking. They say heavy is the head that wears the crown. Like if you knew what an actual, even when people are like king, queen, most people don't even know what they're contracting to when they say that. And most people, if they knew what that actually meant, would that use it now would run away from anything that it would have been to actually have that reclaimed and step into that. Because it's not like the many emperors and kings and queens that are surprisingly still on our planet right now. That it's crazy how many we have through Europe and Africa and Asia and stuff like that. But old bloodlines, a lot of usurped thrones, and a lot that are rising that are going to support mankind in a lot of ways. I dude. So just because do you mind if it just like in this point because I'm just going in multiple areas, but I have like drinking so much water. I'm on this pathogen cleanse right
I
now. Can I
think
just
I think this is I think this is a good time to close it out.
all right, because I know the last like 20 minutes has just been like building and my body.
Yeah, I think this is a good time to close it out. You're always welcome back, brother, and we'll definitely do a part two.
All right, let me see if there's a closing point for this. To find your way back to God and to find your way back home is to find yourself now. And to find yourself, you can only find what is alive, real, and true inside of you. You cannot script or sculpt who you are based off the images of others around you. No matter what you have done, no matter how bad you think it has been, come to God. It is your best friend, and it is you and with you always. And as you ask sincerely what is true and release all contracts of things that helped you get honor, how they helped you get to where you are at now, but recognize and be that there is something happening and be open to a more expansive truth. And as you do so and release this and come back into trusting your own self and being attuned to God, everything you need to know will be shown to you. And trust at this time, if there are any entities or beings or angels that are visiting to you and speaking to in your mind, unless they are there with you, and you know they are, just honor them and claim back the security of your mind. And all of this, get your bodies purified. The pathogenic parasites and microorganisms that make up the vast majority of our body system and everything that influences this, learn how they impact this. Join us for our pathogen purification protocol and the full explanation, if you want the full like multi-hour explanation of what we mean by this. As you clean your body internally, as you clean the world around you, you will have miracles and revelations revealed to you. You will not be alone with this. You will then be brought to others that will confirm this. And you will then be part of the growing body of God as Christ that is alive and living on this planet. Like sardines, we find each other one by one. And so it's more easeful and graceful. And we create and learn how to create, to sculpt and script a reality that we like choose together in unity that can help other people play and win our game too, because their game we don't need to play, but our game, if they want to come home, this is the way. And we got to figure out how we are going to help this and just how we're going to help the many, many, many different beautiful families and lines and children and mothers and fathers that came in here with the biggest heart and got hit and fell down and were left. And we came back here to make sure nobody would be forgotten. Nobody would be left. Nobody would be lost. And so the one and final, if you can understand that, the biggest of all of it is to understand what's been said. Many have said it, but the ascension process that is inside of us and shifts the world around us has fully begun. 1991. 1 to the 9, 9 to the 1. This is a code. 2017 to 2025. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Bridge from 2025 into the alchemical year of 2026. Through 0 point, we begin directly at the 1 instantly. This process the coevolutionary peace treaty that was established in 1992 with the conglomeration of human and non-human alliance to end the war that has been going on through the timelines and DNA and tribes for a long time. The recognition that the specific representatives were now here officially in their bodies and were going to begin to start their ministries and administration at the point of which they reached 33, as the planetary reclamation of our temple was a success. 1992 to 2000, we were planning on figuring out how we were going to disseminate to the many religions, the many nations, because those at the higher levels knew they had orchestrated this. So, like, we knew how we needed to deconstruct it. And as the ambassadors and representatives, such as myself and many others, and potentially you as well, that are receiving this, felt called to receive this, like, there is, let's just say there was a strategy that was being built, and this strategy seemed to be very in alignment, from 1992 to about 2000, or and like September of 2000 is the first time the same groups that met in South Africa just not too long ago, same groups back then, they came together and decided, like, hey, instead of us warring against each other, and then, like, what if we unify and go to war against our teams, like myself and our teams that are here to actually bring forth this peace. Like, we own the militaries, we own the bank, we own the governments, we own the religions. We could easily take them out by the time they're 33, and we can't actually touch them. So just like they had said in that Jesus story, that his own people crucified him or whatever, they can't do it. Get their own people to do it, like, because it's just, otherwise they would be screwed and lose everything. So they decided to play a game of trickery, and they decided to wage war against every one of the indigo incarnate lines and the Melchizedek Christ incarnates and those that are the authentic tribal representatives for the return of the sovereign Christic nations and temple sanctuary. They thought they had the time. They were like, because certain things were discovered through standardized testing in the K through 12 education systems, genetic markers, blood. There's a lot of things that they were using to try to figure out who these individuals were. So they went to war with our teams that are in a large number in every country and nation that are here to actually see this prophecy of peace come into full completion. But 2000, September of 2000, we started to have the defection. Some of them were still saying, no, we're still on the peace treaty with you, while slowly they were beginning a very specific operation. Black Sun's teams during this time at the Vatican opened up 4 portals right before they declared global warfare months later through the world's largest Belial Sun ceremony. It was on September 11th, 2001, known as what happened at the Twin Towers, that was actually, remember where the obelisks were moved, if you remember that, but that was actually a declaration of war against the Magi incarnates that were on this planet, because this was once again a global warfare. Weapons of mass destruction. 2 of the most important gate sites are in Iraq, Iran, and the Afghanistan area. Like, this has been, you got to understand the big side. So at that point, September 11th, 2001, full-on war was declared. There's a lot of things that could be shared, but we'll just say that is what this last year has been. Our teams had from 2000 to 2012 to stop the processes that were happening. All the end of the world, the pole shift, planetary destruction, that was their agenda they were trying to push to create it. Our team stopped it, but something else was stopped as well. So it was kind of a standstill, but at the same time, no, because this opened up something that can now begin. And this is what seeded the 2012 to 2024 preparation process and my specific contract to come alive from 2017 to 2024, knowing if we were successful by the solar alchemical year of 2025 and the year of the 9, everything would align and could finally begin. This has been the beginning to end process of, like, what is the core final war that is at the basis of every war, genocide, and armed conflict that has ever happened. Even the half a dozen genocides and 100 armed conflicts we've got going on our planet now, and have pretty much had every century for century, going back millennia. This is how it ends. And there's a lot that comes from this. And just like they tried to stop it then, once again, what did they do this year? If you watched our Peace Restored sessions and the deliverances, or if you've been part of our stuff, we served the notifications to them of what would happen if they tried to open that and cause the next stage of World War III and Armageddon programming. We gave the warning, just like when we warned President Xi, if you violate this, you will, and enough times, you will leave your body. People were mad at me, thinking we're fighting, we're attacking. No, this is like Moses and the Pharaoh.
We give the options. It's your choice, and it's between you and God. We're not here to fight. We're not here to defend. And sure enough, exact day, exact hour, when they tried to move forward with that, President Xi fell down with a heart attack in the middle of a communist meeting. He was okay. Warning one. The Pope, well, we've dealt with the Vatican, we've dealt with a lot of these, and the actual organizations that represent that has been much longer than just one political representative that we served a deliverance to stop the warfare they were going to try to use to collapse our own state. So this year, look at it, the Vatican. While I was running the 12 12 12 sequence on the third one, the 25th to January 5th, they tried in the final war where they were trying to stop this, they tried to do the same thing they did before they declared war on us. Open up the same 4 portals and open up a 5th one inside of a prison. Stream this to millions. And they knew you don't have to do this, but if you've tried to, it will not work. But we will not stop you because you have free will. And if you do this, it will only harm you. There's a reason why after that year he started going insane, being brought into hospitals, screaming about demons coming after him. It's his own family and what he gave consent to, and he chose not to listen. And what he did was too high of a violation and trespass. So when the alchemical year 9 started, it was time for him to pass to prepare for the transition of the guard that is inner way and here now at this time that is going to serve the highest and greatest good of all.
Yes.
So if there was ever a time to ever ask questions, to ever be open and curious to something, maybe the greatest of everything is happening, it's happening now. And Peter, like you're saying, I'm excited for me to go on a part 2. I trust this will give enough time for those that receive this to allow the depth of it to really come through.
For sure.
Yeah, my dude.
Thank you so much, Ryan. It's been a true honor to have you. I really love you, brother, and thank you for all your amazing transmissions and downloads for everyone listening. And until next time, brother, thank you so much.
Love you so much, brother. Thank you once again. Have a beautiful day and love you all, family. Looking forward to connect more here through the alchemical year of the 9.
Love you, brother. Take care.